Hey, welcome to the 98% podcast where we hear real stories from real people. And I'm here with Chip. So Chip, tell us a little bit about yourself.
That's such a huge loaded question.
Yep.
Telling about yourself. And especially because I've seen things online about people talk about themselves and it's, well, that's what you do, but who are you? And so I almost kind of have this turmoil. I guess, so I'll give you the run of the mill answer that everybody else does. I'm a father, which is one of my favorite things in the world. I'm a handyman. I run my own small business. I don't have any employees. It's just me. I am a big nerd in the sense of like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons. I tend to fly by the seat of my pants and shoot from the hip most days.
Nice.
That's I don't know, I guess me in a nutshell. I'm into fitness, I've been working out for a number of years, and I compete in the Highland Games. So
Nice.
that.
Yeah, that's a pretty good synopsis there. I like that. So, okay. So how do you know me?
So how I know you, I've actually told this story to a lot of people.
Okay.
So, I get this thing in my head, which we'll get into the details of that later. Of I was going to compete in the Highland Games, and so I was like, okay, and we were happy to go into the Kansas City Renaissance Festival on the weekend that they were doing that, and I was like, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to do the thing there and this and whatever it is, I'm doing it. So I find out more about it and get there, and the first event is the stone throw. And I'm kind of like sizing up my competition as you do.
Yeah.
And like the first, I can't remember if you'd showed up yet, but I remember I was like, okay, I think I got this in the bag, and you ended up coming in late, like after they'd done the cutoff. And as soon as you walked in front of me, I was like, he's going to beat me. I instantly knew. I was like, that guy's going to beat me. I just knew it. I felt it down to my soul. And and what's crazy is the stone throw in the or at the Renfest, they count the rolling of the stone, which that's not how it is in an actual competition. And I threw it like 10 feet further than the next closest guy. And then everybody else after that didn't even get close. And then you come up and just sling the son of a gun. And I can't remember if you beat me by like 4 inches or say it was something close. And I was like, I freaking knew it. I was like, gosh dang it, man. And so that's where like the whole this is like my friendly arch nemesis now. So, because it's like you were fit, you were pretty, you had like this amazing outfit on with like your pauldron and stuff. And it's just like, I was like, of course he's going to win first place. That's like the hero looking guy. And, and then we ended up talking, finding each other on social media. It's like, because they took so many pictures and videos, and then you only get, essentially, you had that little half-second clip of your actual throw, and that was it. So yeah, that's how I knew you. And like I said, I've told many people that story that you beat me by like 4 inches. Had it in the bag until you came along. You got first and I got second.
Dude, that's so funny because that whole thing was interesting. So I'll share my perspective. So last year I observed, last year I did this. So sorry, last year I did the stone toss as well. Like I did the stone toss. Me and my dad actually did it. And never threw it. And we just showed up and we launched it. I think I missed out. I got like 4th place or something random. And was like, okay, well, I'm actually going to train because I didn't even train or throw or whatever. I was like, I'm going to train a little bit because I used to throw shot put. I was like, it can't be that much different. So, so I started training for it and I was like, okay, this year, and my dad was like, he didn't do it, but I was like, I'm going to do that's what I'm doing. Stone toss. Don't care if I do anything else, but I'm going to do the stone toss. So if you remember, it was rainy that day.
Yeah.
So I showed
The
up like
stone
20
was
minutes.
lit.
I showed up like 20 minutes early and nobody was there. And I was like, oh, they're going to cancel because of the rain. So we went to go get food. And I was like, just for, kicks and gigs, like, let's go walk and see what's going on. So I walk over there and then everybody's there and they're already throwing. I'm like, oh, no, this is why I came here. So I
Yeah.
show up and I talk to the guy and I'm like, hey, is it too late to get in? And he's like, yes, it's too late. I was like, I came here just for this. Are you sure it's too late? Kind of gave a little pushback and he's like, yeah, it's too late. And what saved me was, if you remember, there was someone in line that didn't sign their waiver yet. He was just in line.
Yeah.
And, they're like, did this guy sign a waiver? They're like, no, he didn't sign one. And, so the guy was like, are we doing that? And he's like, yeah, just let him sign one. It's like, okay, cool. Then he looks over at me and was like, do you want to do it? I was like, of course I do. Yeah. So I'll sign it.
Yeah,
So I
you
showed
trained
up.
for it.
Trained for it. And I was like, thanks, man. I appreciate you changing your mind, because I literally was just wanting to do this event. And he's like, oh, really? I was like, yeah. Okay, cool. So then, yeah, I think you just threw and I just walked up. I can't remember. I think I was the last person or something. And, I was just feeling it. I just showed up, launched it, felt pretty good. And it's funny because you're the only person I remember from that whole event. And I just remember the reason being is because I remember you being like so nice. Like, I just remember like being there and no, really, like, I remember you just being like, great job, man. And shaking my hand. I think you shook my hand like 3 times that day. And I'm just like, yeah, dude, no, it was awesome. Yeah. And it's funny because, you're the only person I remember. So, and I think that how we came into contact, it was on Facebook. I think you replied to some Renfest thing, or maybe I did. I don't remember. Something happened. And I was like, oh, that's the guy. So I was like, hey, how's it going? And then we reached out and then now we're, we chat back and forth. But yeah, that was the whole thing. So I was lucky to even compete because I almost didn't.
Yeah. And it's funny because so something as small as that guy saying no, and then you being allowed us to connect. And now it's essentially almost kind of, in a way, it can project your life in a completely different way. Cause now you're going to compete in the Highland Games.
Yeah. I'm excited.
And that may not even been a thing had you not done the stone throw. And so it's like completely altering your life just by that one little tiny moment.
I know. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. I've always loved stuff like that, where it's like, if you would have and it literally was that other guy in line that didn't sign the thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I'm so thankful for that guy, because if he didn't, I would have still been sitting on the sidelines. You would have won first. I would have just been watching and been disappointed, because I would have said, I should have done that and I could have won, or I could have done this, the whole thing.
Oh, it would have been great. Yeah, because because they did 3 events and I ended up doing all 3 events. I did because they had the stone throw, the caber toss, and then a keg toss. And I got second place in all 3 events.
Oh,
and
man.
There was a girl that beat me in the caber toss. Well, the caber, and for anybody listening, it's when I say the caber toss, it's guys that you basically pick up a telephone pole and then you flip it. And so anyway, the caber, she couldn't pick it up. She was this, petite, like 100-pound marathon runner. She was super nice. And I was trying to give her tips on how to, pick it and stuff, because I'd only been training in my yard up into that point. And she goes, and when I'd thrown mine, I'd thrown it almost perfect. And then she couldn't pick hers up. And so they gave her like a landscaping timber that was like 4 inches around and like 8 feet long that weighed like 5 pounds. And it's like, gosh dang it. And so she flips it and it lands perfect. And so then she ends up taking the win, which my friends and stuff that are watching, they're like, that's not fair. And I was like, it's okay, because it's like, it's not a serious competition. It was all for fun. And she can go home and tell all of her friends that she beat a bunch of big, strong dudes throwing the caber. It was kind of how I saw it. And it kept me humble by only getting second place. So, and then we did the keg throw, which my son joined in on the keg throw. And I think he ended up getting like 4th place, which was wild, against like a bunch of grown men.
Wow.
But yeah, that was a fun day. It was a good time.
Yeah. So then you definitely got first in the caber throw then. We should probably just say that.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean,
you did.
Yeah, I did. If you want to be like technical about it, like, because there was other women that threw that caber and like were, kind of lugging it and tossing it. And so I almost thought it was kind of unfair in the sense of like they should have had a men's caber and a women's caber just
Yep.
because, if they're going to give this one female a certain size caber, it's like, why did these other 2 or 3 other women have to do the same one that all the guys were doing? And I think
Yeah.
there was only like 3 of us that flipped that. And one of the guys that flipped it, that got 3rd place, he will be at Wichita also. So you'll end up
Nice.
meeting him there. Oh, he's the one that we're going to train with next weekend.
Oh, then I'll meet him soon.
Yeah. So you'll meet him next week.
Sweet. Dude, so that's weird. So they only had one caber to throw?
Mm-hmm. It was sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the year before, I'm pretty sure they had multiple weights because I remember seeing different people throwing different size because I was trying to figure out like what is going on right now. And I saw like 3 different ones. So that's weird. So they just did one?
Yeah. Yeah. And we picked out like the heaviest one, but it was only like 9 feet tall. And so it almost kind of threw me off because the one that I practiced with in my yard was 15 foot tall. And so I was used to all this extra weight way above my head. And then I go to do the small one. And whenever I picked it, I almost dropped it. And if you drop it, you're done. So I got this huge crowd around me. So there's a video of me, like I pick it and I'm like trying to like catch it and stuff. And then I just had to take off running with it. And then I flipped it and crowd goes nuts. And it was a good time. So,
Wow. That's crazy. I'm looking forward to training in that. So I'm glad you reached out about it because I was thinking like, I need to do that. And yeah, like I said, I don't know any of the events, so I'm excited to go train and hopefully my athleticism will carry me far.
It definitely. So I feel if you were more of an athlete versus power, because so essentially you have balance and kind of dexterity, that will help you a lot more than just straight power.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I've always had explosiveness too. I think that's what's helped in like the stone toss, for instance, because I'm not like a super big guy by any means.
See, I don't have the explosiveness because I was a bodybuilder for years. And so I was very sorry if my dogs bark. That's my dogs, by the way. So that's actually a drawing too. That's not a picture.
Oh, nice. That looks super real.
So I was, my fiance, drew it. So she does realistic charcoal and pencil drawings.
Nice.
So, but yeah. So no, I'm looking forward to next weekend. So it'll be on Saturday. So it'll be a good time.
Yeah, totally will. I'm excited about it. Okay. So how this works, I always tell the audience is I gave you the questions ahead of time. You could study them as much as you want. But the goal is just to go through these and hopefully find ways to connect with the audience. So, because it's always helpful when we can do so. So what we'll do is we'll start at the beginning. So what was growing up like for you?
So I think this is one. It's funny because I've listened to several of your episodes and I run through these questions over in my head. I have all these different answers. And then it comes time to and you ask the question and then you just forget everything. So I grew up in, Pleasant Hill, which is about 45 minutes southeast of Kansas City. And, both my parents are still together, to this day. Had 2 different religions in the house. My mother's Jehovah's Witness. Father was a Christian. So that was fun. Made for some colorful art, conversations to say the least. But I feel like for the most, I know a lot of people tend to have like, traumatizing childhoods and rough childhood. But I feel like my childhood for the most part was like pretty decent. And which is funny. If you ask one of my sisters, she'll say it was the opposite versus like, our parents thought, but it's like, it wasn't that bad. I didn't really have any friends growing up. Basically all through school, I was kind of the kid that got picked on. But which, I don't know. So I was always just kind of a loner, and in the sense of I would always just do what I wanted to do. I've never been much of a crowd follower. I tend to kind of resist against the crowd, um, in the sense of like, if everybody's going this way and everybody says I should also go this way, I'm just like, why? Well, I want to do my own thing. And I was super into Pokemon. I still have all my old original Pokemon cards, and just all the things I've collected over the years. I played sports. Um, I I skateboarded as a teenager. I played baseball. I was really good at baseball, switch hitter. Um, the thing that I really hated about baseball, because I loved it. It was like my favorite sport growing up. One, because I was so good at it. Like by the time I was 16, I got clocked at throwing a 92 mile an hour fastball, I remember, and I could just, the amount of different pitches I could do was insane. But then, like a year or two later, got caught up into drugs and, all that fell out. But, so I was an exceptionally good player, and my grades were typically bad in school. And so I never played school ball. It was always during the summertime, and I would travel. Well, all these traveling teams, I would like goof off in practice and make jokes and stuff like that. But then whenever it came time to perform in the game, I would outperform everybody. And the coaches didn't like that, especially when I'd outperform their sons, and their sons are practicing, even outside of our practices and doing all these drills and stuff. And I was just kind of naturally gifted with it. And so, even though I would outshine others, I would get kicked off the team each year until there was one team. It's the only coach I remember. His name was Terry Harris. He had like 3 or 4 sons on the team, but treated them just like everybody else. Like you would never even think that they were his son. Because coaches, it's human instinct. You tend to kind of favor your kids. And I was on that. That was the first team I was on for more than a year. And he really helped develop my skills and whatnot. But after the second year, he ended up going through a bad divorce, quit coaching, and the team just kind of fell apart. So then it was back to going from team to team to team again. Until the last team I was on, it was just getting screamed at on a daily basis. And I ended up quitting in the middle of the season. I was just like, I hate, because I played baseball because I just loved it. I didn't care if I won or lost. I just enjoyed it. And I think that's part of what helped me excel, until the fun got sucked out of it from getting screamed at every day. So, but yeah, other than baseball, like I said, even growing up all the way up until about high school, I didn't really have any friends. And it's even, I had like these 2 other best friends, but I was still almost always kind of the outer one. It's weird talking about this stuff because I feel like it's like, oh, poor pitiful me. Even though it's like, I'm thankful like all of that stuff happened. And because it made me who I am today. So, yeah, it was just, I had, like I said, fairly decent childhood. Teen years were a little rough. And I think a lot of that was like emotions. And I grew up around a lot of women, with the exception of my father. Both my parents were always in my life. And so I'm very in touch with my feminine side, I guess. Because it's like if you're too masculine, it's good to be masculine, but I feel like if you're too much on one side or too much on the other, it can cause problems. And so it's good to be masculine, but be in touch with, those feminine pieces of like your emotions and stuff, and knowing how to control your emotions. So, but, yeah, so
Yeah.
it's one of those things like I try to kind of give little synopsis of growing up, but if I get too into it, I'll talk about each thing for 10 hours straight.
Okay. Well, I have some follow-ups, so we'll see. I'll put that
Okay,
to the
okay,
test.
okay.
Okay. So first, you hit a really good topic that I haven't talked about yet on the podcast is you mentioned feminine, right? So what's interesting is people think that because we're a male, we should just be masculine, but we don't realize that we all have both, right? We all have feminine and masculine, you could say energy per se.
Yeah,
And what's funny is what people don't realize is that it's actually like men need to have a healthy feminine, right? Or we need to have
yes,
and women need to have a healthy masculine, right? Because I think it's when they get out of whack, like that's bad. Like if a man can't control their emotions or isn't in touch with their emotional side, that actually hinders connection with other people and relationships, right? So to
yeah.
have a healthy masculine in that space makes sense. And we should be able to pull on that all the time. I think it depends on context, right? Sometimes we need to pull on, maybe our feminine energy. Sometimes we need to pull on our masculine. So I like that point that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned also, I wanted to follow up on bullying. So you mentioned bullying, and I was curious. So what effect do you think that had on you growing up?
Uh, so my mom, bless her heart. She was like one of the nicest people I've ever known in my entire life. I don't think I've ever heard that woman yell once. Um, and she always taught me to walk away. Don't stand up for yourself. And so, and that's what I essentially learned how to do, was walk away, never stand up for myself. And it made me a lot where my dad was the opposite. They thought about it so much to where he's just like, fine, you just let him do whatever he wants. And, it affected me to the point, like even now, I don't like confrontation.
Uh-huh.
I tend to avoid it. But it made me to a point to where I was almost too non-confrontational, and I would just kind of fold over,
Uh-huh.
and I would just kind of let people take advantage of me and let people bully me. And then, after I went through some hard things, uh, in my 20s is whenever I started standing up for myself. And so it almost like it taught me, growing up, being bullied, and my mom saying, just, be passive about it. It made me, weak in a way mentally whenever it came to that confrontation stuff. And
Uh-huh.
I would avoid it. And then now I had to learn to stand up for myself on my own, um, in my, mid to late 20s, and in my 30s toward now, I have a really good balance. I know when to be confrontational. I know when to hold back. Uh, and like, I know guys that are, and I'm sure you do too, that are all about confrontation. The moment
Uh-huh.
something comes up, like they're going to be confrontational about it. And so now I'm at a point to where I feel like I have a fairly decent balance of, it's that masculine and feminine energy, like when to be confrontational, when to pull back, and when to keep your mouth shut, when to keep the peace. So, uh, so yeah, and that's another thing. That's why I say, I'm thankful that all those negative things happened to me in the past. Um, from the time I was a kid until now, just because strength and wisdom come from pain and suffering. So, if you want to get stronger in the gym, you got to put your body under stress.
Yeah.
So, but, so yeah, I'm thankful of the bullying, and it taught me how to handle bullies too. To where, like, anytime now, like if somebody tries to bully me, I just agree with what they say. And then I start bullying myself even worse than what they said. And so it ends up like if we're around a group of people, they start laughing at me because I'm being funny. And that the bully essentially gets kind of shunned out. So
Wow.
it's an interesting way. And I've taught my kids to do that too, on how to handle bullies. With the exception of, I know this is very 90s style. of if somebody won't leave you alone and they won't stop. I know this is super unorthodox. I'll tell the kids, like, punch them in the face. Like, if they get within your bubble, it's like, don't be the bigger, you try to stop it. But if they don't stop, like, just punch them in the face, like, stop it, because then they will stop. Like my kids did wrestling for a couple years, and my daughter, which she's a little smaller than the average female of her age, she's 14 now. There was a kid in line that kept pushing her, and she asked him multiple times. Well, he wouldn't stop, so she turns around and hits him with a double leg and puts him on his back. And it's just like, she came over close, like, yeah, I was so excited. So, and that kid never bothered her again.
Yeah.
And so that's one of those times to where, sometimes it's appropriate to be passive and look the other way. And sometimes it's important to be confrontational. So everything needs balance.
Exactly. Dude, 100%. I talk about that all the time because, lean too heavy in each direction and it's unhealthy, right? Yeah. So it's interesting. Okay, so bullying. So then you also mentioned not following the crowd, which it's funny, I resonate with a lot. And I know you mentioned, did you mention that bullying is what led to that, not following the crowd, or not following the crowd is what maybe led to bullying?
No, the not following the crowd was just kind of a natural thing. My mom said, she said I was like that ever since I was a baby. Like, the moment I could, like, understand things, if she would say, don't do this thing, I'm like, well, now I want to do it because I want to find out why I'm not supposed to do it. So, don't stick metal objects in the outlet. And then as soon as I turn the corner, it's like, okay, where's a metal object that I can stick in there? That's just, and I've been like that I still am. Yeah. So, but, I just tend to, I don't know, I'm just naturally rebellious. And I don't do it on purpose. It comes naturally. So,
that's funny.
Like one of my good friends, she is very, so we're both ADHD, and she has a little bit of autism, but she's very, like, strict, follow the rules. And so when we hang out, I'll be like, just run the stop sign, or it's like, stop, just go. And I tend to break rules all the time. And she just gets all in a fluster because she's very follow rules. And I'm very like, just break all the rules. But you don't want to break all of them because some rules are there and important. But, like Harry Potter, if they just followed the rules in the whole movie, they never would have saved the school. Voldemort would have taken over and all the bad stuff would have happened. Sometimes you got to be a little rebellious to get things done.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree. It's funny. I was just asking because it was interesting because I've always been the exact same way. So never been a crowd follower. And the same thing. That's how I feel. If everybody's doing something, I'm like, okay, I need to figure out why, because I'm not going to just follow. There's something going on here. Yeah. And so, I was always like that in high school. So I never had any bullying issues though, but I was always just whatever I was into. And I tend to always be different. I mean, I was, singing metal music back in junior high. I mean, I was that kid, screaming on the school buses and having a fun time there, it's just, I had no shame. It was just like, I did me, I had fun. I was good at sports. I was just kind of a mix of everything. But I was friends with everybody too.
Enjoyable.
Yeah. It's interesting because I just did what I wanted, but it's funny because I always tell people it's like I fit in everywhere and I also fit in nowhere. It's like I was just,
oh my gosh, like I've never heard that. That's perfect.
Yeah, because that's how it was. Like literally, I was friends with everybody, and I was athlete. I've also, I'm a nerd as well. I'm into music. Like I'm into just all this random stuff, but I never fully committed to any one of those things. So like if you were to, so there's certain things like, oh, you're a nerd, right? Well, I mean, I don't like, yes, but no. But then it's like, but you're a jock. No, well, I'm good at sports, but no, so it's just kind of one of those weird dynamics. But I was the exact same way. I just always did what I wanted to do, and it seemed to always serve me well.
That's good.
That's interesting. I like that. And then you mentioned bad coaching, so I thought about that too. And that is one reason why I did not enjoy team sports very much. I don't think I ever had, I think I had one coach I know for sure that was solid. And he was actually the track and field coach, which track and field, I love track and field. I was really good at it. And because it doesn't matter, like if you're better than someone else, you're better. Like the time will show, the distance will show. There's no politics. There's none of that involved. You show up and you perform.
Yep.
And I love that aspect of it. But yeah, that coach we had there was just solid. He was the first guy that I think that I met as far as a coach where he was like, hey, so what are you into right now? Or what are you doing? Or just like, he was just curious to get to know you rather than just like everything being about the win, right? It's all about the win. And I'm
Yep.
always like, man, like, so to your point, you talked about people, coaches yelling and making you not want to, stay. And I think that's an issue sometimes. I think we lose track, or a lot of coaches do, on what's actually important about the sport. They take it way too serious. And, yeah, it's frustrating because then there's people like us that we just want to play for fun, and it takes the fun out of it. So then what do we do now? We have to find a summer league to play in, or we have to do something else. Like it just kind of sucks.
Yeah. And that's where I think people that do things for the fun of it a lot of times will outperform somebody that's doing it just to win. Like the saying, the man that enjoys walking will always go further than a man that enjoys the getting to the destination. Or so, it's some saying like that. But yeah, it's like the Highland Games. Like when I go, it's like I want to win, but I'm just happy to be there. I could get last place, and I'm just going to be excited that I got to do it all day. So
Yep. I like that. See, I'm the same way. It's funny. I used to be really bad about that. I think my ego used to take over a lot back in the day, where it's like, if I didn't win, I got sad, or I just wanted to win. That's all I was ever focused on, to a certain extent. Like, but now it's just like I do things for fun, and it's so much more enjoyable. I I learned that when I started playing golf, for sure, because it's funny. Super athletic, but guess what? Golf doesn't care if you're athletic or not. You can't just pick up golf and be an athlete and do well. It sucks. So, because I was used to just showing up, and like my athleticism just kind of got me places. And then I show up and play golf, and I'm like not even hitting the ball. And I'm like, this is frustrating, Yeah. And then I remember just, with time, just starting to just like, let's just play and have fun. And then lowering that expectations of myself too, because that's what was the issue, is the expectations I put on myself. It's like, Ricky, wait a second. Why do you think you should be good at golf? How often do you practice? Never.
Yeah.
Then what are you expecting? What are you upset about? And it's like that mental, me telling myself that was just like, oh, you're right. What the heck? Why would I expect anything different? So I just go play, have fun. I improve every time I play, but I only play like once every year or two, so it's very rare. But it's funny how like that inner voice and that ego can definitely get in the way of us just enjoying things, right? It's interesting.
Oh yeah. I totally agree with that.
Okay, so you ready for the next question?
Yes.
Okay, this is the good one. This is the juicy one I always like to tell. So, what is the biggest struggle that you made it through?
I'm gonna end up crying on this one. Finding, getting divorced from my ex-wife. That was the biggest struggle, in the sense of, I caught her with another man, and I remember I came home. I put a loaded shotgun in my mouth with the safety off, and she started screaming for my brother. Now, technically, my when I say my brother, he is technically my ex-brother-in-law. It was her brother, but him and I have such a close bond that we feel like blood brothers. And he lived with us for like 8 years. And even after she moved out, he still lived here for another year and a half. And he still comes over and plays Dungeons and Dragons every other week. So I still see him all the time, and he'll forever be my brother. But anyway, she started screaming for him. He comes upstairs, wrestles me to the ground, gets the shotgun away. And it's just, my life is now crumbling apart. Because this person I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, it's obviously not going to happen now. And we had 2 kids together. And at that point, when you're in that mental state, you're not thinking correctly at all.
Uh-huh.
And that it was just a horrible. That day was horrible, and then the following months after that was probably the my darkest mental time in the sense of because I had started lifting in like 2014. Yeah, I started lifting weights in 2014, and then that happened in 2015, and I quit the gym. I picked up smoking again, um, and I lost 30 pounds in 30 days. So I started the gym at 155 and I was up to 190, 185 at that point. And then I was back down to essentially where I started in 30 days. Um, and then about 6 months after that, um, and I started kind of dating again, uh, and going back to the gym and I quit smoking. As soon as I started going back to the gym, it was funny because my kids even told me like I had lit up a cigarette after I was leaving the gym, and they said something about it stinks or whatever, and said like put it out, and so I threw it out the window, and that was the last time I ever smoked. And so my kids see it as like they're the reason that I quit smoking,
Uh-huh.
and which is fine. I
Uh-huh.
basically believe that. So anyway, this next I'd kind of dated a little bit here and there, but this next woman that I allowed myself to fall in love with, and I was still severely traumatized from my marriage, still struggling a lot. And this new woman allowed myself to fall in love with, and it was a very um, up and down, to say the least, to where made me feel like I was on a high, and then the next day, like, ripped the rug out, and then the next day back in a high, and it was like that for like another 6 months or 4 to 6 months, just day after day after day, and just up and down, up and down, and it got to the point. I remember. I'm trying not to cry because this part I'd say because it's I remember it all like it was yesterday. Um, I remember I was at work and I finally cracked mentally. And I was a trash man at the time. Um, oh, sorry, I'm already getting choked up. And I remember I texted her, I texted my ex-wife, cause, we were still, we had split custody with the kids. And all I could think of was, I didn't want to be alive anymore. And I, sorry, it's hard to get out. I thought my kids deserved how somebody else as a father. So I remember driving home. I ended up taking my trash truck back to work. I dropped my keys off and I told my boss, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't. And he's like, what's going on? And I also, mind you, since my divorce, I went from being talkative, cheerful, like I am now, to I didn't say a word to anybody. I was in so much pain. Like people at work would come up and say something to me and talk to me, and I would just turn around and walk the other way. And I did that for months. I didn't utter a word to anybody. And anyway, so I went back to the shop, dropped my truck off, got my keys to my car, and like I said, I had texted my wife. I was like, or my ex-wife, I was like, I'm done. I'm done with this. And I was like, I'm going to kill myself because, like I said, I thought my kids, they didn't deserve me as a father. This world would be a better, the same thing that most people think when they're suicidal. I drove home and ex-wife started just like blowing up my phone, trying to get a reaction. And I completely didn't respond or anything. And that's when she's like, I think she was like, oh my gosh, like and I texted her because I was scared I was going to go through with it. I was legitimately terrified. Uh, so like I said, so I texted her because I was scared I was going to go through it. I got back home. I made a noose. I put my head in it. And at that point, and my brother was there and he was like knocking on the door and I wouldn't say anything. And then, police ended up coming. And they came in the room and I'm just a mess. And I took the noose off because it's like, what am I going to do? Try to fight them hanging myself? And, so they, there was an officer that had talked to me. Uh, his name, his name was Martin. Great guy. Still friends with him to this day. And every now and then it's funny. I thank him for talking me through things. He talked to me to the police station where I had to write a report. My ex-wife came there. Of course, everybody's upset. And then they took me down to, the took me down to the mental hospital. Martin talked to me the whole time, but I never looked up until it was finally time for him to essentially say, goodbye. He walked me through the doors. He had to leave, and so he'll always have a very special place in my heart because he talked to me like a friend. I didn't know who he was, but he talked to me like a friend through all of that, between like leaving my house at the police station, going down there. And I spent about a week there. And now, mind you, it was also my third trip to the mental hospital. The first two times were when I was a teenager. But yeah, I didn't even talk about that. I used to be anorexic. Totally skipped over that. So I used to have an eating disorder when I was a teenager, that I ended up in the hospital for. So, I spent a week down there, met some good people, got out, and that same girl that it was like gave me all the up and down stuff that essentially put me in there. She ended up coming over to my house like a day or two later, and she's only over here for 5 minutes because I guess my brother was like this close to like going upstairs and like beating on the door and be like, get the F out of here. So I've struggled with suicide a lot, throughout my life. I did when I was a kid and when I was a teenager. Like I used to, now that we're getting into all this nitty gritty stuff, I used to cut myself, when I was a teenager. And now I'm wise enough now that I understand that that is 100% not the answer. And my kids deserve me as a father. They deserve to have me in their life. I deserve to be here. I deserve life. Everybody that is going through that struggle or anything, each one of those people deserves to be here. And the world is a better place with those people here. The world is a better place with me here. We would not have become friends had that happened. You may go on this Highland Games journey and it's just going to be like awesome and great. You may turn pro and it's like a whole thing, you don't even know. And so it's like none of this and it's like I have, amazing children, because I have my 2 blood kids and my 2 step kids. All 4 of them are just wonderful. And, had I done those things, somebody else would be raising my kids. And I told I told my daughter, because I picked her up, her name's Sailor, like a sailor on a sea. And I picked her up on Friday from her mom's. And I told her about how I was like, I was in kind of a bad mood today, but now that you're here, I was like, I'm a lot happier now. I feel better that you're here. And so I love being a father, and I love trying to be a better man and a better father. And because I know I wasn't always a good father. I used to be an alcoholic to the point to where I was drinking before work, at work, on lunch, when I got home from work, before I went to the gym. One time I even filled up my shaker cup with a Bud Light Clamato, and I drank that while I was at the gym. And then once I was done with the gym, I would just drink the rest of the night. I was just getting really bad around, it was like 2020, 2021. And then it got to a point to where my fiance was like, some stuff happened. She was like, either you keep drinking or you keep me. What do you want to do? And so I quit. And I had a couple, but when I first quit, it's like, well, I'll drink whenever we play Dungeons and Dragons, or I'll drink whenever this. And I started making excuses to drink. And then I ended up getting drunk, coming home, and she's like, you said you weren't going to get drunk. And that's when she's like, either like me or you're done. And so I quit just like that. And that was in fall of 2021. And the only drink I've had since then was by complete accident. We're sitting here at the computer. I had like my white monster. She was drinking her little girly drink, and I'm on the computer, and I go to grab my drink and take a drink. Well, I accidentally grabbed her alcohol and threw it back. And I was like, ooh, and I spit it back out. So I didn't even swallow it. And I was like, because for a moment I had the split second of like, do you swallow it or spit it back out? I spit it back out. So that was like a little like pat on the back moment for me, where it's like, I overcame that. And and my kids also got to see, that's when I quit drinking, I started becoming a good father, cause it's like when you're drunk all the time, you yell, you're short tempered, and you're stupid. Nothing good ever comes from drinking. And so, and I'm a firm believer, it is never too late to do something. It's never too late to try. Because part of me was like, it's too late to try to be a good father now. Well, I have now spent the last 3.5 years being a great father, paying attention to my kids and listening to them, and I can probably count on one hand the amount of times I've yelled, maybe only 2 or 3 times in the last, since I quit drinking, the amount of times I've yelled. And now I'm a very calm, gentle, kind of understanding parent. And I like to be like that. It's like, it's okay to have that violence in you, but it takes a lot of strength to be gentle, even when you're angry. So my computer shut off. And so, yeah, I try to pay extra attention to my kids now. When they want something, it's like, okay, we're going to do it. Or with money wise, like we'll try to figure it out. And I just love being a father, and I just love having kids. And my son, Ulrich, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger.
Love that movie.
So Ulrich von Liechtenstein, that's where his name came from. He is going to be throwing in the youth division at Wichita. So it's, so yeah, the overcoming the divorce, the suicide, the going to the mental hospital, the drinking, and then even after the drinking, towards like, even though I'm like on this projected of like trying to be a better man, trying to be a better father, I still make a lot of mistakes, and I've made a lot of mistakes. I continue to make mistakes. But like now I go to therapy. My therapist is a 72-year-old, like, quick-witted woman that will cuss at me, tell me if I'm being stupid. And I adore her to death. But, so yeah, I knew I was going to cry when I talked about it. So I do every time because it was a very emotional time for me. Because that was like the one time I was like, I'm scared I'm going to go through with this. So, but I learned a lot from it. I learned that, life is worth living. And even when it sucks, when it's at its worst, and because we're going to go through one of your questions that's coming up, can't wait to get to that one, about like the tough stuff I'm going through right now. Better days are ahead. It'll eventually get better. Whatever you're going through, it's always going to get better no matter what. So, so I essentially I can get through basically anything now. I've grown a lot of mental and emotional strength, and I try to be as emotionally intelligent as possible, which includes being aware of everyone else around us and what everybody around us is feeling and reacting according. So, okay, I'll stop rambling for a second.
Yeah. No. Dude, and that's the thing though. So a lot of people don't realize this is I don't think people realize how much. So when I think about men, so we think about, you mentioned suicide, right? And I don't think people realize like how many men either commit suicide or think about committing suicide. It's an insane number. I don't remember the statistics offhand, but
it's like every 60 seconds, something like that.
Exactly. It's crazy. It's crazy too. Yeah. And it sucks because, right, we go through hard times like that and we can't think clearly. There's stuff going on, but I also don't think that there's a lot of help out there for men. And I wanted to ask you this question, and I wanted you to say, like, going through that time you went through, because it seems like, right, you've made it through extremely well. Now, what do you feel like you needed in those tough times? What were you missing, or what did you feel like you needed in those moments?
So for example, the tough time I'm going through right now, I am staying busy. And I'm letting my ADHD just like run its course and getting distracted and doing like I think I completed normally from like 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. I essentially would just like sit and wait or doom scroll and wait for time to come down. Just like I completed a bunch of little tasks, including running to Walmart and hanging that picture up that I wanted to hang forever. Because I was like, oh, the camera's going to be there. It'll see that. And I can talk about my fiance a little bit and the arch that she does. And it's just like, and so it's the staying busy definitely helps a lot. Therapy helps immensely because it allows me to understand my toxic traits. It allows me to take accountability for my toxic traits. And being around my close friends when I need them. Like one of my best friends in the entire world, Cody, he's gone through some recently a pretty bad breakup, and checking on each other, how you doing and stuff. And when I go through my stuff now, he checks in on me. And it's that, or if it's really bad, I'm just like, hey man, like we need to get a lift in or something. And it's just that kind of being able to vent, to me, I think, with somebody that you trust, really in the most part kind of helps more than anything. So it's like, yeah, you can stay busy, but you're still in your own thoughts. And so yeah, I think the most important thing is just you have that person. It doesn't need to be a whole group of people. You don't need all these other people to vent to. It's just, you need at least one person in your life that you can just kind of dump that out to. A lot of times, because it's just when we cry, like if you're on the verge of a mental breakdown, you have that breakdown, you cry, and then you're like, okay, I'm better now. I can go do the things. And it's the same thing with venting. You have all this stuff inside of you. And then if you can just get it out, it just, it helps take the weight off your shoulders a little bit.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think check-ins, I think is really important, being able to have friends that check in on you. And I'll share my story in just a second, but also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll bet you weren't just venting, but I'll bet you were making sense of what was going on. Because I was reading some statistics and they talked about how it's not venting that actually helps the situation, but it's making sense of what's happening that helps sometimes it does happen through venting where you're sharing this information. All of a sudden it's starting to connect things in the head and stuff like, okay, that makes sense. And I'm curious, is that how you felt too? You felt like it was making sense when you were sharing stuff like that?
Yeah. Cause I had another friend I was sharing things with, and in the middle of it, I almost would like kind of stop and think about stuff. Cause it's one thing to just have it in your head, but when you get it out, it puts all those puzzle pieces together.
Yep.
And that's the making sense of it. And, so yeah, just having that support system there to where we can talk, vent, make sense of it, and just get those things out where we understand better is, yeah. And it's just when you get in that state of mind of like thinking you're actually going to go through it, it's just like any wave that's in the sea and it'll eventually pass and it won't stick around forever.
Agreed. And yeah, and the reason why I said that too is you've probably met people like this. Have you ever met anybody that vents nonstop about the same things over and over and it seems to never get better? That's an example, right? I know you know people like that. I know people like that where I'm like, okay, you've told me this like 14 times. Are you going to do something about it? Are you going to make sense of this situation? Like what is going on?
I have a very specific friend that does that. He drives me nuts. I love him to death. He's a great friend and he means well, but it's like, dude, like you complain so much. It's like, you got to do, and they're all self-induced problems.
Yeah.
Like 99% of them are all, So it's a very woe is me, poor pitiful me. Like, look how hard my life is. And I'm like, I want a harder day because it'll make me better. It'll make me, so it's just,
dude, and I read this book that I thought was fascinating. And in this book, they talked about, it was a book on values essentially, but what they talked about is take responsibility for everything in your life. And I started thinking about that as a value. And I was like, that was probably one of the most impactful things I thought of during my tough time is just to think like everything bad happening, it's kind of a result of me. If you think about it, if you look far enough back, like I chose to be in a relationship with this person. I chose to be friends. I chose to do this. Like everything bad happening, it's me. And the funny thing is when you think about it from that perspective, it gives almost a sense of control where you're like, you know what? I can make different choices or I can do something different. It's like, it no longer feels like it's out of control. And it's really interesting perspective.
Yeah. It's one of my friends told me, or it may have been something I heard from Jordan Peterson. Life it's 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react to that 10%.
Yep, exactly.
So
you're so right. Yeah. It's like that's like a Stoic philosophy too. I do a lot of Stoicism stuff sometimes too. And they're always like, it's all about perspective. It's perception of the issue.
Have you, read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius?
So I have not. But
it's so good.
I know. So I listen to a lot of Ryan Holiday. So he's obviously a huge Marcus Aurelius person. I don't know if have you read any Ryan Holiday?
Uh-oh.
Okay. So I'll read Meditations, but you need to read Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. Okay. Probably one of the most impactful books that I've read that when I was going through tough times, I was just like, dude, this makes sense. It was awesome.
I'm a big audiobook guy.
Me too.
And so whenever we finish here, you'll have to send me that and I'll throw it in my library because I got credits. So, and I'm in between books right now, so I can start it tomorrow.
Nice. Okay. No, I highly recommend it. But then also I was thinking too, so friends, and I'll share my story real quick and how this showed up, but because I don't know if you listened to it or not. I know you watched some episodes, but, so I went through a similar situation as you actually. So, went through a separation, divorce, was married for 12 years. And it kind of just came out of the blue. And what's interesting is like, I don't think I took it very well. Like, I think in hindsight, I think because I remember talking to a lot of people and them saying, dude, you're handling this extremely well, but I don't think internally I was. And I just remember like, yeah, to your point, like everything just kind of fell apart. Like I didn't know who I was anymore. I mean, a total identity shift, right? Because you've been with that person for so long. And then it's funny, you tend to internalize everything. And I don't know if you did that, but I blame myself for every single thing. And yeah, it was nuts. But I remember, yeah, going through tough times. And I remember being very similar in a similar place where I was obviously this outgoing person and then just turned to basically just a reclusive person, like just didn't talk to anybody, didn't do anything. And it was those friends that reached out that said, hey, let's go do something, that I am so grateful for. I think about, because the thing is in those moments, and I don't know if you felt it either, but when I felt it, like I didn't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I did, but I didn't, right? Like I was in such a bad place that like I didn't want to go reach out. I didn't want to go do this or do this. So I remember a neighbor specifically that he's awesome. And I just remember him saying like, hey, just meet me outside in 5 minutes. Okay. And picked me up. We went out to have dinner and talked. And, for months, it was probably, I'd say it'd been 5-6 months of me just being quiet to myself all the time. But I don't think people realize how grateful I am for them, even though I was a boring, non-talkative person, but the fact that they took me out and we did things, I think I'm super grateful for. So I think it's really important. So I think when we get in those places, you said you had friends that did that too, is like being able to reach out to each other and help people out through situations. And yeah, I think that's huge. So I would say that was probably a big one. And then journaling. I don't know if you journal, but journaling was probably single-handedly the thing on my own that I thought was the most beneficial. I took a journaling course, and out of that journaling course, I started writing stuff down. And I think the best part of it is I have this portion called brain dump is what it's called in this journal. Basically, just write down what you're thinking. So you could say it's kind of venting, but it's not. Because what you do is you write down all the crummy things that are going on. Essentially, like, man, this is happening right now. I'm struggling with this, and you just write it down. But then you don't just leave it like that, because a lot of people journal and they leave it at that. But instead, what you do is then you answer yourself. You talk to yourself like as if you were talking to a friend. Because we're nicer when we talk to friends than when we talk to us.
So what you mentioned that in one of your other episodes.
I did.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that.
I had a little short like that, but yeah, that's right. But yeah, but I think that's an important part, is like being able to just have that conversation and say like, like, hey, it makes sense that you're feeling this way because this is what happened. Hang in that, like, just like being able to give yourself like that advice that you would give someone else that was going through the same thing was it was a game changer for me going through that time. And I still look back on that journal and it's full of a lot of stuff, but I just look back on it like, dude, I'm grateful for that. And yeah, and through my tough time too, like I don't think I dated anybody for 9 months. I waited a long time just to date anybody. And I don't think we also realize how non-healed we are too. Like I thought I was better at 9 months. First relationship I got into, I could tell I wasn't healed that much at all.
Yeah.
Because it was similar to your situation. I don't know how much was me and how much was the actual situation itself, which I don't think it was good when I talked to people about it, but still like, it was like lots of connection, lots of fire, felt really good. And then it'd be like, why aren't they talking to me? And then it started bringing up all this anxiety in myself of like, what's going on? Why aren't they talking? Why are they doing this? And, yeah. And it's just same thing, put me on a roller coaster. And I was like, dang. But yeah, it's funny. The more I do it, the more relaxed I feel. And it's just interesting. It's just when we go through those tough times, it is what strengthens us. And I wrote this down as like your story was, it's a hero's journey, right? Like you had to go through that stuff in order to get where you are now. Right. Because if the hero always made it through and there was no struggle, what a boring story that would be in the first place. Right. Would you watch that movie? Yeah. I wouldn't. No. Right.
I want to see somebody just like, David Goggins. I know it's like people have a love-hate relationship with him.
Yeah.
But it's like, I love that guy because he's just been beat to death over and over and over. And he's just like, oh, let's do it again. Let's go again. And he's a phenomenal human.
Yeah.
So
agreed. And it's funny because I think of this as I think if I didn't go through that divorce, the struggle, and make it through, I wouldn't have learned all this stuff that I have now. I have so much more knowledge on things that I didn't have prior. Two, I wouldn't be doing this podcast. This was an idea I had out of that struggle. So we wouldn't have even been talking had that been the case. I think about, just the way I connect with people now. It took me, that struggle to even have empathy. I didn't realize I wasn't an empathetic person. Like, I didn't get it. Like, when people say, like, I'm struggling, I'd be like, why? Why are you struggling? It was beyond me. It was beyond me. Like, I didn't seem to have a lot of struggles, or I just always had that positive mentality where it's just like, if I didn't even think about it. So I didn't understand until I went through something like that, where I was like, I get it now. So when people talk about their struggles, I understand. And it's just funny. So my connections with people have gotten better, right? Because you need that sense of vulnerability, that sense of empathy in order to actually build connections. Because if it's all just logic-based conversation, like, there's fun in that, and it's good to come up with big ideas, but it's not a deep connection by any means.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. So I'm grateful for all of it too. So I loved hearing how, it sucks, right? There's no denying it sucked what you went through, but at the same time, like, to see where you are now, like, that's amazing. It's completely amazing.
It's amazing where you are now as well. So,
yeah,
and all the struggles you've been through. So
it's just, we needed it.
It's good for you. I'm proud of you.
We needed it.
Yeah, you really do. So it's like, and it's this weird, and then being a father too, like with my kids, like I have this burning desire to like protect my kids, like all of them. And it's like, I just want to protect them from the world, but that's so detrimental. And it's like, and so it's like, I also want my kids to go through those struggles. Like I had a friend, like when it came to, my kids are old enough now to where it's like, I don't really have to punish them anymore. There's just kind of like, hey, you know what you did? Don't do that. Don't be stupid, but when they were younger, like once they got, to the point, and I know people are against spanking. I spanked my kids. I grew up in the 90s. They're all fine. But when they got too old to spank, I started doing more like physical punishments. So I had my friend make like the workout sled that you like push in the gym. So I had my friend make a kid-sized one, and I attached a rope to it, and they would like have to drag, push, pull that up and down the driveway as a punishment. And depending on how severe they're like what they did, it might be 60 seconds, it might be 10 minutes, it might be X amount of times. But which they were also doing wrestling at the time, so it helped them with their cardio and stuff. So, but no, it's like it's good for kids and adults to go through tough things, and so it's like I want to protect my kids. I want to give them the absolute world, but I also want them to struggle when it's important to gain that. Sorry, one of my daughter, her friend is coming over to stay the night. But no, it's important for them to go through those struggles and have good days too. So I really enjoy teaching my kids wisdom, and which my stepdaughter, we have a rule. I can only give her 45 seconds of wisdom, and then I got to cut it off. So, but for the most part, like all my kids, like they're pretty good kids. So they each got their own very unique personality.
Oh, no, I got it. Yeah. It's funny. We need to do hard things these days too, just in general. We're too comfortable. Like, we keep creating stuff that makes us more comfortable. And it's a problem because we think we want that, but we don't want that. And I think that's why, like, so many people do the gym these days, right? The reason being is because we need to do hard things, right? Where I think we're programmed for it. It doesn't make sense. So I forgot about that too. Yeah. Gym. I got into the gym a lot after my divorce. That was like my big entryway back into the gym. I took a break forever. I think I took a break for like 6 years because I didn't think I needed it. And then went through that and then realized, you know what? I needed it a lot. And why hadn't I been doing this for 6 years? So nuts. But yeah, highly encourage that too. Exercise.
Oh yeah, it's life changing. Literally, it'll change your whole life. So, and there's a lot of times where we go not for the physical, but for the mental.
Exactly. It's
Or
all connected.
it's therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So next question. So I know you've been itching to talk about this one. So what are you currently going through right now? Uh,
Uh, my fiance and I are, uh, we have separated. And so that is, it's been a pretty aggressive struggle to say the least. And that's where I'm thankful for what I went through years ago with my ex-wife, because now it's not easier to get through. It's not any less painful or agonizing, but it is the wisdom and understanding, knowing that I'm going to get through this. I'm going to come out better. I'm going to be a better man because of this. Um, so, which we're, on good terms and stuff. Um, and it's just, so yeah, that's just in a nutshell. That's my big struggle. And then, so with being separated from her, cause she moved out recently, um, I'm also losing two of my kids that I've been raising for the last 8.5, almost 9 years. So, and I told them too, it's like, even if your mom and I never get back together again, it's like, you guys are still my kids. Like, I'm still your stepdad. And I will see if you guys ever need anything, like, just tell me. I don't care if I haven't talked to you in a year. Like, you can ask me whatever. I'm still going to be your dad. So, so that's the difficult thing I'm going through right now. It's just essentially reliving all of that pain and agony over again. And a lot of it is from my own mistakes. And that's where I said, where it's like, yeah, I quit drinking and I've made a lot of improvements as a man, and I've made immense leaps and bounds becoming better, but then I've also made more mistakes. And now it's like going to therapy and taking accountability for those mistakes,
uh-huh.
and still trying to be a better man, to where I want to be the best version of myself I can possibly be. And a lot of that, I think you mentioned it earlier, is that accountability of past actions. It's your fault why you're in this position. If you would have acted differently, made different choices, you wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah.
So, but, so yeah, it's tough to say the least, but, um, I'm going to get through it and come out better on the other side, and she'll do the same. And, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's the current struggle in a nutshell. Is my family's broken apart.
Yeah. Don, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's
Yeah, there
okay.
is.
So
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. Yeah. And there's wisdom in that approach too that you talked about, is like figuring out, you said going to therapy and seeing what you contributed to it. So I've seen too many times where someone just blames the other person for whatever situation, when a relationship in general is always two sides. It may not be 50-50, it may be 90-10, it may be 90-10, but still, whatever that 10% is that you can work on is going to help you so you don't have to go through it again.
See, and I think, with that, everything that you just said, like with my ex-wife, I when we first parted ways, I just saw it as, it's all her fault. It's all her fault why all this is happening. I just want to blame her. But then once everything settled down and I started understanding and I started looking back, I realized, like, oh, a lot of those things I was blaming her, she did those because of what I had done. And then now it's like, I totally understand why she did everything she did. And it's like, don't fault her at all. I'm fully in my heart forgiven her. And I wish nothing but the best of her. Like, one thing I've been big on is I've never wanted to like talk crap on my kids' mom to my kids. And so I've always like wished her, hope she's doing well. Like she's married now. She just had a baby with her current husband. He's super nice. He's always treated my kids great. And so it's like, I have no complaints, and I've wished them nothing but the best in their marriage and their new kid. And just, there's too much hate in the world. And it's just like, I just wish, it's like when you beat me, I was so excited for you. It's like, good, good job. Like, congratulations. Like, you did great. And I was genuine about that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and when my friends like do great at something, two of my friends, they've recently gone on like a 7-day vacation. Yeah, that would be nice if I could do that too. But I'm not jealous. I'm excited for them. I'm happy for them. Like, I want to see everybody, even that girl that took me on the roller coaster. She's married now and stuff, and I wish her the best. I wish she heals from all her trauma and is doing good and well. And I just, there's too much negative blame and not enough understanding. And like you see on Facebook all the time, it's always like, oh, my ex was the piece of shit. And is there cussing on here? Is this an NSFW? Because I've been trying not to cuss this whole time.
Feel free. You're good.
But it's always them throwing negative things to their ex. And then I'll see that same ex, because I'll be friends with both of them, saying it was all their fault. And it's like everybody's always blaming the other person. And it's like, what? We just need to take more accountability. And that's why it's like where I see like where I'm at now, it's like 90% my fault. And I have friends that probably disagree, and I could be wrong. It could be 50-50. It could be the other way, 90-10. But I think it's important though that I try to take accountability as much as possible. And all those things that I did make mistakes on, I work towards improving them, not making the mistakes again. It's just like if my kids make a mistake on something, don't do that again. Same thing for us adults. Don't make the mistake again. So, and take accountability and don't just blame the other person because you're upset. So that's where that emotional intelligence comes into play, and being able to control our negative emotions and anger and not act on those things and keep a level head. So it's stoicism.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And, to that point, I just think about everybody's always a narcissist these days, right? Isn't that the common thing these days? You've seen it. Every post is like, man, I didn't know she was a narcissist, or I didn't know he was a narcissist. I'm like, come on, not 100% of the world is not a narcissist.
And I think it comes down to, so like, my fiance would say, like, it's not, somebody is not necessarily a narcissist. They can have narcissistic tendencies. So like if that's a bad example. The point is like, let's say it takes these 10 boxes, and if you check all 10 boxes, that makes you a full-blown narcissist. You might have 2 or 3. They might be pretty bad, but that doesn't make you a full-blown narcissist. You just might have kind of some crappy things you need to work on from trauma, from past relationships or growing up or whatever. So,
it's a spectrum, right? It's not you are art, it's a spectrum.
Yeah, that's like, man, don't get into spectrums, because I'll get into like a whole steroids debate, because it's not like a natty or not thing, it's a spectrum. It's like, I'll tell you this one little blip about it. So like testosterone, for example, you take testosterone, you're not natural, even though it's a natural chemical that's made in your body, but they're like, well, it's made in a lab. Well, creatine is also made in a lab. And so you could say, and it's a natural thing. So you could say somebody that injects testosterone or takes creatine, they're both equally unnatural. And that's where it gets onto like, there's a spectrum of natural or not.
Yeah. That makes sense. There's a cutoff, right?
Yeah.
And what people deem.
If you're taking trend, it's like, okay, you're Definitely on the far end of the spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, who is someone who's changed your life that doesn't know it?
Man, I thought about this one a lot, and it's not going to be a normal answer. Me not going with the crowd. So, everyone in my life that has been more than an acquaintance has changed my life in some way, shape, or form and shaped me as a person. And I could even say all the way down to the people that I have been acquaintances with, because it might be a joke that I picked up from them or a certain mannerism or something that I liked, or I remember this one thing about them that kind of changed my view on something. And so there's a lot of people in my life that have changed me. I mean, there's several that stick out more than others. Like Tom, who has been coaching me for the Highland Games. He's been throwing for like 30 years. He's that one competition that you were going to do up in Green Top originally. And I've had some mentors and just good men over the years. But like when I really thought about it, it's just everybody that I come into contact with that's more than acquaintance has really helped shape me as a person. And I think even more so than the mentors is my kids and the partners that I've been with long term. But so yeah, I mean, even you, like you're essentially shaping my life, and doing this podcast is a lot because I'm gonna listen to it after it comes out and kind of like evaluate the stuff I said, and but that's gonna have a hand in changing my life because I'm reflecting on a lot of things. So, and I'm very thankful of everyone that's come into my life, whether it's been a positive or a negative. So it's just because it's all driven me to where I am. And I'm not happy yet with myself. I don't like who I am at the moment in the sense of, I don't hate myself, but I like the direction that I'm headed. And it's like not liking your physique in the gym. Like, you have a nice physique, but you don't like it. And that helps drive you to get a better physique. And that's where it's like, in a way, it's kind of okay to not like your physique. Cause if you were just happy with it, you might kind of, relax a little bit and like take it a little easier and not work as hard. And so that's kind of, how I see myself now. I don't like myself, but in a good way, because it's driving me to be a better man, a better father, a better everything. And I can thank you and my mentors, especially my kids. I adore my children. And ironically, I rarely ever post about my kids. I've always been very private about my kids, because a lot of parents, like when they're proud of their kids, they just like post the crap out of them all the time. And I like that my kids have grown up not having their whole lives blasted on social media. I mean, I posted a couple things. Like I posted my son flipping his first caber because that was exciting. I posted my daughter's first win in a wrestling match, but it's just like, I like to keep my kids private. So yeah, everyone in my life in some way, shape, or form has shaped me, especially my father, and my mother, because I get a lot of my kindness and thoughtfulness from my mom. My dad gave me the ability I can literally figure out how to do almost anything. That's why I'm a handyman. In the sense of like, I can do plumbing, drywall, carpentry, all of it, plumbing, everything, concrete, it doesn't matter. And this computer that I got a gaming computer right here, and I built that myself. Ordered all the parts, put it together myself. I can do all the software stuff on it and fix issues. I can fix my vehicles, and I can do a lot of stuff. And I have my father to thank for that, because he gave me the mentality of, if you don't know how to do something, you'll figure it out. So yeah, that was an answer I thought a lot on before this. And that's where I came up with the answer. It's like, there's no one person, because there's been so many people in my life that have had a hand in changing my life. Even the people in my Dungeons and Dragons group. Like, I adore every single one of those people. They're just phenomenal people. So, yeah. I have a lot of good people in my life. So I'm very thankful for a lot of people, including yourself. So.
No, well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you.
Hey, well, I appreciate you too. So,
well, thanks.
I do have a follow-up real quick though. So you mentioned you're not happy with where you are right now, but you're happy with the trajectory. So I want us to follow up. So when will you know when you're happy?
So the happiness thing is, my therapist recently told me, she's like, you're not a happy person, but you have a lot of happy moments. And I was like, damn, it's like, that hurt. And, cause I saw myself as like a happy person, but she, like, listening to me and stuff, she's like, no, you're not. You just have a lot of happy moments. She's like, but that's good, because even when you're unhappy, you see the positive in things, and you see that silver lining, and you're just, you create a lot of happiness in your life. Even though it's like, it's that depression is a constant struggle all year round. And I think once I get through this separation, no matter, and I know that one of the guys you recently was like, oh, I'm single, so if anybody, I'm not looking for nothing. So, it's just, I think once I get through that, once I get through the separation, once I heal from it, and because once you heal from it, then it's like, now that's a whole new chapter to where it's like, okay, where do I go from here? So, man, what a question that is. Gee whiz. Because this is back to the, not venting, but what's the term that you used? I don't know, realizing of what you're saying and stuff.
Just making sense of it.
Yeah, that. Because now I'm making sense of, now that I'm thinking about it, that's to where maybe it's okay to, instead of just disliking myself, I like myself who I am, because I'm constantly on the pursuit of being better, even when I make mistakes. And I just totally take that chunk of like, oh, don't like yourself? Like, let's just throw that idea out the window, and you like who you are because you're doing what you want to do. I'm not going backwards, I'm going forwards. And I like that about myself. So, and I think if I focus on that, see, what a guy. You make me think about this stuff, and I make sense of it. And now, see, there you totally changed my trajectory on like the way I think about myself. And now it's like, boom, concrete. So thanks for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, one of the reasons why I asked that is because there's an interesting thing there, right? So I read this book, Four Agreements. I don't know if you've read it. Good book. Like it. Easy read. But like the last agreement was, always do your best.
Wait, what? Say it again.
Called the Four Agreements.
I think I've read that book. I think I read that like 6 months ago.
Yeah. It's a good one. But the last agreement was always do your best. So when I think about that, I think like we can do our best without attaching our worth to it, essentially. So when I think about that is I've seen people go in an unhealthy direction where I think you should create the life that you would be happy with, essentially. Like I think there is that thing of like, become who you'd want to be. Like people say this all the time, like if you wouldn't date yourself, then that's not good. So you need to get yourself to a place where you would date you essentially. So, because what I've seen is I've seen people pursue this like thing of like, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to keep doing it because I don't like it. And what happens is I've noticed that people continue, and there's no end in sight, right? They don't know actually when they're going to be happy. They end up continuing to go down this track. And if you look at it, you realize like, oh, it's because of that, right? Your identity is tied to whatever that is. So it's like, it's the same thing we talked about it earlier. It's balance, right? So it's balance at the end of the day. And I just thought when you said that, I started thinking like of people I know in my life that are continuously on this path of just they're pursuing. And it's actually because they're not happy and they're not going to be, unless they can shift that. And it's just a really interesting thing to think about. So.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Man, cool. What a guy.
And then the other thing I wanted to say about that is I liked your examples. Is I feel like what's cool is you have the ability to learn from anyone. So when I think about this is I think a lot of the people that have changed my life because they showed me what not to do or who not to be. Essentially,
I'm really good at doing that myself.
Yeah,
and making a lot of bad mistakes. So.
Yeah. So, because I think about this all the time, like, what do they say? It takes wisdom to learn from other people's mistakes, but we tend to not do that, right? We tend to go through it anyways. Like, so-and-so's like, yeah, I did this and it sucked. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do it anyways. And guess what? It sucks.
Yeah, maybe it'll be different.
Exactly. Yeah. We say that, but I think when you can do that, there is wisdom in it. I think about like, for instance, like I work in a position now where it's training and development and it's leadership development and stuff like that. I think about, I give people advice and tools to become better leaders. And when I think about that, how did I come to that conclusion? Actually, from the beginning, when I dealt with all the poor leaders that I worked with that were above me, I learned exactly what not to do as a leader and how I felt in those positions. So it gives me the ability now to teach people and also give that flip perspective as, hey, when you do this, this is what happens, and I can share my story and how that affected me. So it's like those little things that like you always have the ability to learn, even if it's like somebody's doing something super terrible. It's like, hey, well, actually, you know what? I see that person do an angry outburst all the time. You know what? I'm not going to be an angry person. I don't want to do that because it seems immature. Perfect, right? Like, and you could just think about that stuff throughout your whole life. So I love that you had like such a big group of people that you learned from because you can learn from anyone essentially. So I like that.
There's so one of the books, Jordan Peterson, The 12 Rules of Life or for Life. One of the rules.
I got it here behind me.
Oh, okay. But one of the rules in that book is assume the person you're talking to knows something you don't. Something like that.
Yep.
And that like totally changed my perspective. See, and that's another person that changed my life. It changed my perspective on like, I'd been lifting for years. Like this will be my 11th year in the gym. And I was getting to a point where it's like some new person would come in and I would just be like, I know more than you. Like, shut up. I don't care. I know more than you. And now I'm just like, well, maybe there's one piece of something that they've learned that I haven't learned yet. So now, even if I know 99% of everything they say, I'm looking for that one tiny little thing that I don't know. And now I'm going to add that to my arsenal.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's a very wise thing to, just take in what other people have to say and listen.
It is.
And understand that you don't know everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And that you don't understand. It's okay to understand that you don't understand things. Oh
yeah. How can you grow, or how can you have wisdom if you think you know everything?
Yeah. Like the people when I had this one friend, I would mention a thing and he'd be like, oh yeah, okay. And I'd be like, do you know what that is? He'd be like, yeah. I'd be like, what is it? And he'd be like, well, I don't remember. And it's like, okay, well, just don't act like, just tell me you don't know and I'll explain it. Cause one of the things I tell my kids, is there is wisdom in not knowing things.
Yep.
And by accepting that you don't know something, by telling somebody you don't know a thing, that then allows you to learn and then you grow your knowledge. Versus if you just act like you know everything, you just kind of stay closed-minded, and then you could potentially be completely lost in the conversation. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You're only a fool for a moment, right? So like you ask a foolish question or whatever, but guess what? You learn and then you can move on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you don't ask those silly questions, you're never going to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The amount of times where somebody will be mid-sentence and they'll say a word, and I'll say, like, what does that word mean? And people will be like, you don't know what that means? I'm like, no, that's why I'm asking. Like, just tell me what it means. So
I do the same thing. So it's funny because I used to be the other way, and that's why I changed it. As I used to be the person that knew it all because I felt like I would look foolish if I didn't know something that seemed to be obvious. And then one day, I don't remember when I realized that, but I realized that. And then, now first thing they say is, and it's funny because people also call me an alien too, because apparently I don't know stuff and I just arrived on Earth not that long ago. Because I don't know like obvious stuff sometimes, but it's because I'm like, tell me that. And I'm like, wait, you don't know what that is? Like, no, just tell me about it. And I think that's important because sometimes we walk around pretending to know, and it's not helpful for anyone really.
it's kind of like the common sense thing. The amount of people I have heard say, well, these people don't have common sense, or this person doesn't have common sense. When it comes down to it, everybody has common sense. Everybody does. But we have our own little areas of common sense where it's like, I don't have the same common sense as you, and you don't have the same as me, or the same as this person. We all have it. It's just our own unique, essential, like, branch of common sense that we have. And it's being able to understand that aspect, and it just makes life a lot easier to get through. Like even in traffic, to not get road rage and stuff. So it's like, oh, like somebody cuts you off, like maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe their girlfriend just broke up with them and they're not thinking, So anyway,
yeah,
I'm going to digress a lot.
Well, I mean, the thing is we're the sum of our experiences, right? So technically our realities are all different. We have 7 billion realities. So to say like common sense, it's like, well, maybe I haven't had that same experience that you had, right? Or same with you, right? So it makes sense. That's why that saying that I'll always remember from elementary school or whatever was common sense isn't so common. It's always stuck with me.
See, like me, I've never heard that.
Yeah. It's like, I heard it like in elementary school. It's like one of those easy sayings, and somehow it always just stuck. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay,
like
cool. So now what's a skill or talent you could share with us?
Man, I was thinking about this one. It's like, I don't like tooting my own horn. I want to say, like, I mean, my most recent skill and talent is doing the Highland Games. And, because I could go into like, oh, I know how to juggle, or I can belly dance. And I learned both of those when I was 13 because I wanted to. I know how to skateboard still in the old age of 35. I don't see, and it's like, I say this, but I know some people would be like, no, you could do this and this and this, where it's like, I don't feel like I have the skill and talent of being able to, like, I can tear down a house and rebuild it. Everything on the inside by myself. So I'd say that's probably a pretty big talent. So, that's where it's like, that's why I do what I do in my business as a handyman, but I'm just a very more broad handyman because my dad doesn't like that term. He's like, you need to say that you remodel and you're not just a handyman. It limits you. I was like, no, it doesn't, because I can literally do anything. Like, I don't care if you're, one of my friends, her sink was clogged. I went over there with a plunger, unclogged it. It took 2 seconds. I didn't even charge her anything. I was like, it took me longer to drive here than it did to, fix your sink. Or I can do a whole entire bathroom remodel. It doesn't, I can do anything when it comes to a house. So And I work on electricity live probably 90% of the time, like a madman.
Mhm. That is a skill. That's a good skill, though.
Yeah, but that's how my dad taught me. He's like, I'm going to teach you how to work on it live. I was like 13 and he's teaching me how to do electrical. And he's like, well, I'm not going to shut the power off because if you get used to doing it with the power off, then you're going to be more careless and you're going to grab stuff you're not supposed to grab. So if you learn from the get go, don't touch stuff. You tend to be a lot more careful whenever you work on things.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I like that. See?
Yeah. My dad is he's very purposeful with a lot of the things he does, and which is carried over into me. Everything that I tell my kids or my partners or friends, every bit of advice I give, and down to almost everything that I do, everything has a purpose behind it. I don't like to just do things or say things that have no purpose. I mean, it's not, and even when it comes down to like jokes, like I'll say joke because the purpose of finding humor in it. But I just like, or like my kids, my son said something the other day that was false. And I asked him like why he said it. And he's like, well, I heard it or whatever. And I said something about like, well, you need to be very purposeful with your words because that's incorrect. And then I showed him because if I say they're wrong, I will show them why they're wrong and explain it to them, or we'll look something up. It's like you need to be purposeful in the way you talk, the way you act, being a gentleman, respectful to women. Everything you do should have a purpose. Mm-hmm. Maybe not necessarily 100% of the time. You know, sometimes it's good to just goof off, you know. Like when I play Dungeons and Dragons, I am not the serious guy at all. And I like to just be, but then you can say, well, you goof off for the purpose of, you know, because you find enjoyment out of it. So there's finding that clarity in everything that I'm saying.
Yeah. See, I relate with that though, too. I think almost everything I do is very intentional. Mm-hmm. So it's not just doing things just to do things. And, I can't stand that either. Like I'll poke holes and stuff like that. Like, especially like, and so, cause you mentioned the rules thing earlier. Like I was talking actually to my boss actually today about stuff like that. Like, it's like when people have rules, like I'm fine with rules if they make sense. If they're stupid rules, I don't understand. Like there needs to be like intention behind, like, why would you follow something that doesn't make any sense? So I don't know. So I'm very big about that. Is like if I'm telling you something or sharing or doing something, it's usually with intention.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like having a rule. And it's like, well, why do you have that rule? And they're like, well, I don't know. It's like, well, does anybody know? No. It's like, well, then what's the purpose of the rule?
Exactly.
Like, let's just get rid of that. So, and then something gets screwed up and you're like, oh, that's why that was there. Never mind.
Yep. And that happens sometimes too. So that's part of it. But that's good though. You're testing out those rules. If they can't hold themselves, essentially, if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But if it does, it does. So I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah. Now, okay. So next question. So what are you learning about currently that you could teach us?
Man, I glossed over this one. I was like, I'll come back to it. And then I never came back to it. So this one's an on-the-fly question. I am learning more about myself as a man, and especially with the situation that I'm currently going through, and what I want in life, and the taking accountability, and the learning about my toxic traits. Like one of my toxic traits that I learned recently is that whenever I have a hard decision that I want to make that involves somebody else, I kind of inadvertently get them to make the decision. And so then I can come back and say like, well, I'm not the one that made the decision. You are. And that's one of my toxic traits that now I'm learning to essentially get rid of that. And when I want to make a decision, I need to make the decision myself.
Mm.
Um, because, hard decisions are hard to make. And it's almost a way of that old non-confrontational piece of me is kind of what it stems back to. And that's where it's like, that's a piece of that it's like, hey, you need to make those hard decisions yourself. And it's fixing those old broken pieces of me. And I think if people focused more, I hate that term, like, well, people just did this. Because, everybody can just do what they want. It's their own life. Like I try to worry about just myself and what I'm doing. I don't really care what other people do as long as you're not harming others or trying to screw up my life. But I think if more people, just tried to do more internal work, tried to understand that 90% of what's going on is things that they have caused, coming back to that. I think that a lot of people would be a lot better off. Things would work a lot smoother because we'd stop blaming everybody else. And that because then if you blame everybody else, it's like, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with me. And then there's no change. Versus if we look internally, what did I do wrong? That's where it's okay, how can I change? How can I be better? Because it's not my job to expect this person to change. It's my job to expect me to change. So that's a big thing that I think I'm learning right now, is learning about myself and who I am. And that's like, goes back to your first question. It's like, who are you? And it's like, well, I gave you kind of a surface answer, but when you get really down to the nitty gritty, it's like, well, Chip he has toxic tendencies. He can be narcissistic at times. He can be hilarious. He can be serious. He can be stoic. I can be this and that. And it's like, there's so many qualities to each and every one of us that we tend to not focus on. And we spend too much time focusing outward and not inward to become better for ourselves. And like one of the things I just thought of earlier, you were saying, like, when we get wisdom from other people, like, oh, this person did that, I'm not going to do that. It really bothered me growing up that my dad never told me he loved me and he never hugged me. And so I was like, I'm going to hug my kids and tell them I love them all the time. And I've done that. And I've always made sure my kids know I love them and stuff. But now looking back, my dad showed me he loved me in other ways. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that he loved me. And there was, because he showed up to every baseball game I had. He went to every practice. He spent money on me for that stuff. He like really poured a lot of time and energy into me. He just didn't, but I was too focused on the I love you and the hugs because my mom gave me that all the time. But I didn't get that from my dad. But then now looking back, I'm just like, oh, my dad loved me to death. There's no question about it. So, which there was other reasons why he didn't. And so now I'm very understanding and I don't blame him at all. I'm not upset with him at all. I love my parents. I love them both to death. So I enjoy my parents, even though it's like, as long as my dad and I don't talk about politics, we get along pretty good.
Nice.
So you don't talk religion, money, and politics. You don't talk about in good company.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, there's so much of a divide, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. It's just best not to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, that's why, like, on my socials and Facebook and stuff, I'll share my Highland things, and I share memes and just stuff that I find funny. And I do, and like politics stuff, whether I agree with it or disagree with it, I don't comment or nothing. So I just try to, I keep that stuff to myself. I talk to my close friends about it. and that's basically about it. So,
yeah, I think it's a simplified way for people to figure out people without actually figuring out people, right? Like it's like we're associating like, oh, that's your political stance. Okay, I know what type of person you are. And it's like, no, you really don't.
yeah,
And it sucks because like even on this podcast, I've had people all over the spectrum on all stuff. And I think all of them are awesome people. But it's just crazy thinking that like because of who you think or who you side with in politics makes a difference. And I don't know. And I think this is what we see. I think social media has exaggerated this like it does everything else. Is I think I will wager that 80% of the population are in the middle, slightly leaning one way or the other. That's what I think. And I think what we see and what's blown up on social media is we see extremes on both ends. Extremes on both ends are bad. It's all bad. If extremes on both ends are never good. We talked about balance, right? But I think what happens is we tend to put people in those classes and it's awful, but it's just like, oh, you're conservative. Oh, you're liberal. Sorry, man. Sorry. I just don't think we can be friends. It's like, you're not even going to get to know me. You're not even going to like, and I've seen that and it's dude, it's tough. And I can't
it's like,
stand it.
You voted for this person, delete me. And it's like, so you want everyone to agree with 100% of everything that you say. It's like, that's not good. No. Because that's when like tyranny and bad things happen. You want the opposition. You need the conservative and the liberal. You need both because there's good ideas on both sides and there's bad ideas on both sides.
Exactly. Yep.
That's right. It's like everything comes down to balance.
Yep. Agreed.
So
100%. Okay. So now, what are you doing for fun?
Okay. I was looking forward to this question. So I do the Highland Games, which I've mentioned multiple times. So on that, I'll go over kind of the real quick. There's 9 different events that we do, which you are also going to be doing. The one that everybody knows, the caber toss, which is like picking up a telephone pole and you flip it. And it's not about how far you flip it or how far you throw it. It's how it lands. So if you think of like a clock, like you have 12 o'clock and then you have 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Well, whenever you flip it over, you want it to land at that perfect 12 o'clock. That's what you want out of it. And then you have your weight over bar, which is where I take, as a heavy athlete, I take a 56-pound weight and I throw it straight up over a bar. If you end up doing the light weights, yours is a 42, which I did get Tom's extra 42-pound if you want to try it.
Nice.
That 56 sucks a lot.
Okay. I'll try both.
You'll do the 56 and you're like, yeah, I'll be a lightweight. So you have caber, weight over bar. Then one of my favorites is sheath, where you use an antique pitchfork and either a 16 or 20-pound bag, and where you hold the pitchfork and you sling the bag up over a bar. Then you have 2 hammer throws. You have a light and a heavy hammer, 16 pounds, 22 pounds. You keep your feet planted. It's not like track and field hammer where you spin and throw. So it's a Scottish hammer, which is with a solid handle down to the weighted ball. Keep your feet planted, swing it over your head, throw it behind your shoulder. Then you have weights for distance, where you take a lightweight, which is 28 pounds, and your heavyweight, which is 56 or 42, and you spin and throw it as far as you can. And then there's stones, which is like shot put. So you have like the Braemar stone that you did at the Ren Fest, where you keep your feet planted. And then there's also which that's with a 22-pound stone. And then the open stone, where you are allowed an approach, and that is with a 16-pound stone. And we have to do it all in a kilt. So it is the best camaraderie, friendly, nicest people I've ever met in my entire life. And even the guys that are competing right next to you are cheering you on and giving you tips and tricks to do better, because even though they're trying to beat you, they want to beat your best version, which is just great. So then I also lift weights. I was real big into bodybuilding. I was a natural bodybuilder from 155 up to about 200. And then from there, I started using enhancements. My heaviest, and I started being, and I was very healthy whenever I started that stuff. With, really paying attention to my health and doing everything I was supposed to. And I got up to 237 pounds, at my heaviest. And cause I was going to try to push 240, 250. Well, when I got up that heavy, I was getting to the point, cause I'd been using them off and on since 2017. And then in 2023 was whenever I got up to that 237, and I was not being healthy anymore. And I was just pushing for power and size and just push, push, push. Well, my heart is still used to that 155-pound guy. And so I almost went into heart failure, and ended up in the hospital. And because I loved bodybuilding. Bodybuilding was just, I ate, slept, breathed bodybuilding. I just loved it. And I loved getting bigger. I loved adjusting the proportions of my body. Almost had the heart failure. And so I had 4 out of the 5 signs for a heart attack, the heart failure. And because one of my good friends, her sister works for a heart surgeon and was relaying everything. And they were like, you need to go to the hospital right now or you're going to die. And so then I got off everything, and that's one of those blessings in disguise where, I essentially almost died. I changed what I was doing, and now I take vitamins. I eat my vegetables. I now weigh about 220. So I've lost a little bit of weight. And I stay natural most of the time. And if I do take anything, it's just testosterone, because there's no negative side effects of that. And it's a very light dose of it. I don't do anything crazy like what I was doing, because I get my blood work done, and I really try to stay focused on health now. And so that, because I could no longer be a bodybuilder, I essentially was lost in the gym for a year and a half. And I would go and do my workout, but I wasn't fun anymore until I discovered the Highland Games. And that is what led me to the Highland Games and where I'm now. And so now I still do a little bit of my bodybuilding workouts, but I do a lot more athletic workouts. So I don't have the size I did, but I'm much more functional. And I have more of an athletic build now. And I feel better. And I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I'm having fun in the gym again. And the Highland Games is just, I'm obsessed with it. It is just my favorite thing in the world. And so that's where I see it was, almost going into heart failure was a blessing in disguise, because now I'm healthy and I feel good and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And it's just, I'm having a lot of fun now. Outside of the fitness type stuff, I've mentioned several times I play Dungeons and Dragons. So I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons since 2015, I think. And my current group, we started playing January 2020, and we have consistently played every other weekend since then. And which every now and then we'll take a month off, or maybe 2 months, just because of holidays we usually do. And I was actually the dungeon master for the first 3 years. And so I was the one that made all the story and just, tying things together and plot twists and painting miniatures and so behind this wall, I have a whole Dungeons and Dragons closet full of miniatures and books and swords, and just, I'm a huge nerd at heart. And so that's, and like I said, my group that we play with, my son is in that group. And then there's, which I had to quit dungeon mastering because I just got really burnt out. And I started going through basically whenever the downfall of my fiance and I's relationship kind of started, that's whenever I can't think straight whenever I'm upset. So this has kind of been a long time coming until, she moved out, about a month ago. But I've been like going down there and helping her like get her house fixed up and like hanging TVs up and hanging curtains and helping paint. And I had to do some plumbing to get her washer and dryer up and running. And, so I said, it's like we're on good terms and I'm just trying to help her get things going and stuff. But anyway, I'm digressing. So my group, it is 3 teachers. 2 of them are married. And then one of them is just this innocent person that I want to protect at all costs. And he's like almost 30, but I just like all of them. They're wonderful people. I'm the chaotic one of the group that's been through like all the aggressive trauma and stuff. And, so, they're just really good people and they're really good to play the game with. And that was, so what thing you said earlier about when you were going through that stuff, those hard times, and you had your neighbor or whatever, like, come on, come out, let's do the thing, and we're going to talk or whatever, even though you don't want to talk to people if you need to. And so, it was, I think, like a week or 2 before Dakota was supposed to leave, my fiance. It was just, I'm bawling my eyes out on a daily basis and crying. And it's in the, like, just the thick of it. It's very rough. We had Dungeons and Dragons one day. I thought it was supposed to be the following week. And so I'm like mid emotional breakdown and people are showing up at the house and I'm like trying to pull myself together. Mm-hmm. And Mike, the dungeon master, he knows I'm up in my bedroom. He comes upstairs. Nobody does that. Nobody goes upstairs. But he, like, Megan, one of the other players, she had said, like, I don't think Chip's doing okay. Because I almost started crying in front of her. Because it's just, like I said, I didn't know anybody was going to be here. And I'm having a rough time. So he comes up there. As soon as I see him, I just crumble. Because he's one of those people I just feel safe with, We need our safe place. We need our bros. And he's like, hey, I know got a lot going on. He's like, we don't have to play today. We can just cancel. It's no big deal. And he genuinely meant that. We just like cancel. Everybody leaves. And I have a day to myself. I told him, I said, no, I think it's more important that I play. I think it's important that you guys stay here and I'm surrounded by good people and we go on with it, which made him super happy. He was very excited. And it turned out to be the great session. And I ended up being like kind of the highlight of that session. And it was a lot of fun and it was great. And I went to bed with a smile on my face. And that's where it's important to have those people around you, even if you don't want it. It's just, we need people. People need people. We're designed for it.
Uh-huh.
So, but, and then after D&D, it's my kids. I just adore my kids to death. Even if it's just, like going to the grocery store with them, cause if it's just me and the kids, it's going to be chaos and they're going to be picking on me and we're going to be picking on each other. And it's a lot of chaos, but it's a lot of fun. And even whenever in those moments, like I get irritated cause they're doing too much, I remember one day, eventually I'm going to miss these moments. And so I spent too much time, especially during my divorce, not focusing on my kids because I was going through a lot of pain myself. And so I missed a lot of their younger years to just not focusing on them. And so now it's like, any moment I'm with my kids, I really try to soak it up if we're doing something together. And, so yeah, it's such an odd question because the amount of times people ask you, it's like, what do you do for fun? But then you realize how boring of a person you are. Cause you're like, I don't know what I do, but I enjoy the things I do and I like being a nerd. I like my nerdy stuff. Like I used to play World of Warcraft. I don't really play video games anymore. I played a lot of The Witcher 3. But like when I started doing the Highland Games, people would tell me, they're like, yeah, that seems like the kind of thing you're into because you're into a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
So I'm getting, my fiance gifted me for Christmas a custom Lord of the Rings lifting belt. And it'll say on the back around it in Elvish, "What about second breakfast?" Because I feel like I resonate with that saying. Especially when I was bodybuilding, I was eating 7 meals a day. And then on the inside, there's a Gandalf quote that I feel you and I can really resonate with, especially with everything we've talked about today, which is all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. And that's where it comes to that 90% of reacting. You make the decisions, and that's what leads to where you are. So, but it's like an aged brown leather belt, and then the lever on it, they couldn't paint it the color I wanted, so I just got a black one, and I'm taking it to the body shop, and they're gonna paint it like a chrome gold, like the ring.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I'll be wearing that at the competitions whenever it's finally ready. So
that's sweet. Dig that. Yeah, that's cool. I like that perspective too. Yeah, I've heard some interesting statistics that are kind of sad. Thinking about one statistic was like, once your kids leave the house, you've already spent 90% of your time with them that you're going to spend. And it's a weird thing to think about. You're like, dang, because think about it. Like when you leave the house, yeah, you come see your parents, but you don't see them as much as you used to. And it's like, dang. So it's like, yeah, enjoy the moments you have. And then the other thing that I really resonated with is a lot of times we look back and like, oh, if I was young again, or if I did this, or like we look back at the age we are now, it's like, whoa, that's think about this. Imagine being 70 or 80. Think about that. Think about looking back on your life at this current moment and enjoy it, because you're going to be old one day looking back like, man, when I was 35 or when I was this, like live that moment now.
Yeah. That's why I was like, with the Highland Games, like I was worried about getting injured. Because since I work for myself, I don't have health insurance. So if I get hurt, like I'm just screwed. But I'm just like, you know what? I can play it safe my whole life, and I could end up getting in a car wreck, and that's how I get injured. I was like, I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to take the risk, and I'm just going to hope for the best. So
there you go.
And there was I don't know if you know anything about peptides. So it's not a steroid. And I was having some shoulder issues. There's this one peptide called BPC 157, and it's nicknamed Wolverine juice. And all it does is it super heals you, like super fast. And so I had this old injury in my shoulder from 2018 that whenever I'd flip a caber, within 3 flips, my shoulder was just done. Like, can't do it anymore. It was so painful. So after my first competition, flipped the caber 3 times, and it's just, my shoulder's just toasted. It feels like I got an ice pick in it, and it's from an injury from 2018. So I found out about this peptide. I took it, and within 20 days, that old injury from 2018 was completely healed.
Wow.
And then I ended up having another injury on this shoulder. Same thing. 20 days, totally healed. My dad, he's 71, I think. I think he's 71. He was getting to where his hip was hurting him so bad, he was kind of having a hard time getting around and walking and stuff. And so I gave him some of it. And he said within 30 days, 80 to 90% of his hip pain was gone. And after doing it for like 40 or 50 days, it was completely healed and hasn't had a problem with it since.
Wow.
And that's something that doctors will not recommend because, no offense to doctors, but typically a customer healed is a customer lost. And doctors tend to push a lot more pain medicine. And I'm very, like, I want to do, since I don't have health insurance, I want to do everything in my power to heal whatever is wrong with me without going to the doctor. Mm-hmm. And so I'm still paying off that doctor bill from my almost heart failure like a year and a half ago. And so uh, this is something. It's like a miracle chemical that, and there's no negative side effects other than you might get headaches from time to time, which I never had any. My dad didn't have any. Everybody else that's taken it hasn't had any. And it's something that I really started to push on a lot of people. Anytime they have any type of injuries, like you need this stuff. And it's an injection. You have to inject it every single day into the site, but it's like a little tiny insulin needle. But I'd rather do that than just take pain medicine and just you're slapping a Band-Aid on it. And now both my shoulders are great. I don't have any issues with my shoulders at all anymore. And I used to fight them constantly in the gym. So, and especially doing the Highland Games. So yeah, BPC 157. That's, like I said, it's not a steroid, it's peptide, but it's good stuff.
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I've never really paid attention to it much. That's really good insight. I'm writing it down now.
Yeah, I recommend it to everyone. So that has any type of injuries or whatever. So, and even if you do get in it, like say you tear your bicep or whatever, and you're in the recovery process, you could take it and you're going to heal just that much faster. So
that's sweet. Dang. Okay. Cool. Okay. So we got a few questions left. So, okay. We've covered a lot today. So this is one of my favorite spots. So, so if you were to write a story from when you were born to now, what is that story called?
Man, I thought about this one a lot. And I thought about, oh, I could do this catchy, whatever, this meaningful thing. But at the end of the day, I'm a simple man. And I have a very good friend, and she would argue tooth and nail. She's like, you're not a simple man. You're anything but a simple man. She's like, you're complicated and, very complex and all this stuff. But it's like, I just see myself as I'm just a simple man, and that's what I would call it. So I'm just a simple man. So, cause it's like, I like my Dungeons and Dragons. I like my white monsters. I like my family. I like my Highland Games, all the stuff I like to do for fun. I like my friends. It's simple things. So I like my dogs.
I like that.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like a lot of my life is so overly complicated that it's nice for things to just be simple sometimes at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Okay, I like that. A simple man. Okay, so we have 2 questions left. So this one is just going to be, this is just for you. So this is the part of the episode where you get to share with the audience anything you want that maybe we didn't cover, or if you wanted to share your socials or anything you're going, if you're trying to hype up stuff or share your business, this is like that window for you to speak on.
So one of the things that we talked about a little bit before is that I was looking for a patent lawyer, which I don't know if you talked to that guy yet or not. So, but I'm willing to talk to multiple patent lawyers because I have several inventions that I'm trying to get off the ground. And which I don't want to go into detail any of them because I don't have patents on any of them.
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing. It's like I need a patent lawyer. And then as far as my socials, like I'm sharing my Highland Games journey on all my socials, and I'm Sir Chipper on basically everything. And it's SIR, which I don't know if you know this. So SIR is a gentleman versus SER is a knight. So like Sir Ulrich von Liechtenstein would have been SER, not SIR.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So, and I'm like 90% sure that's what it is. That's where it comes back to. It's like, make sure your words have purpose, son. But I'm pretty sure that's correct. So yeah, Sir Chipper on all my socials where I just I post my Highland Games stuff. And then as far as my business, Sloan Handyman Services, LLC, it's just, I actually have not advertised since the day I started my business, like in 2019. I basically put a thing out, everybody shared it, and business just boomed. And now all my work is word of mouth, recommendations, and repeat customers. I don't even have my business name on my van, or I don't even have business cards. So if that says anything, so it's like I feel like I do good enough to where I don't have to advertise. But I will do everything from I'll unclog your toilet to install a ceiling fan to remodel your whole bathroom to anything. I got one customer, I go over there to like, I'll hang up a picture. So on our walls. So it's just, I basically do about anything. So as long as I can do it by myself. If you want me to pour a whole driveway, I'm not going to do that. I'm just one guy. So, but yeah. So patent lawyer, search shipper, and then my handyman business, basically all I got to promote. So,
okay.
and then I will say, I mean, since I'm on here, my fiance who I'm separated with, if anybody wants to see her art, she does commission work like that for pets. Dakota Leda Art on basically all her socials. So a little plug for her.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's sweet of you, by the way.
I'll stop. I'm not like I'm not a vengeful person. There's only one person now I have a little vengeful for if I ever run into them.
Okay, fair.
There was two, but one of them died. So not by me. Not
okay.
by me.
Yeah,
not by me.
No comment. Okay. That's funny. Okay, so here we go. So now we're to the last questions. This is a surprise question, so I always like doing this. So the last guest created a question, not knowing who was going to answer it. So that's going to be for you. And then you're going to get to create a question for the next guest.
Okay.
So the question is, what art do you like and what does it say about you?
Oh man, I love dark art. There's a Polish artist. He's one of my favorites. Gosh, his name starts with a Z. You can't, if you see his name, you can't even pronounce it, but he makes this like nightmare art, and it's very thought provoking. And I like the type of art that really has a lot of emotion behind it and true art. I don't like the banana taped to the wall or like art that doesn't take much effort. Like I don't like that stuff's for the bird, especially because it's like, like I said, my fiance, she drew that with her hands, pencil. It's wild. So I'll see if I can like take this off the wall, maybe so you can see, maybe if I can get it without like a glare. So
wow.
Yeah, so all that was drawn, which this dog here, he actually just got put down about a month ago, which is very, very sad because that's the first time I've ever experienced death in my entire life. Made it 35 years without ever losing a close loved one. So I'm fortunate for that. But, there's several Polish artists that I like. One of them, there's a Lorna Shore album that he did the cover on. Do you know the song Into the Hellfire by Lorna Shore?
Yeah, it's their best song.
Yeah, I love that song. I always tell my kids, like, I'm going to play a nice, relaxing song, and they know that's the one I'm going to play. But the artist that did that album cover, I love he's got kind of that nightmarish style art. So I guess you could say I like a lot of paintings because a lot of the art that I like, it's some type of painting, especially paintings that have light in them. There's this one artist, he always played with light to where it'd be in a dark room and there'd be a candle and the way the light would reflect off everything was very beautiful. And then I think part of that question was like, what does it say about me? Is that correct? I like dark things. Like I remember you saying your favorite color is black. And I guess you could say a lot of I have a lot of darkness on the inside, and I have a lot of nightmares uh, on the inside. But when it comes down to that one type of art that I like with the light, I like so all of that. His art is dark with those little bits of light, and so it's like I'm always trying to find the light and everything. So that yeah, yeah, that's my answer. That's my answer.
I like that. I like that. It's funny because I'm the same way. I like dark things. I don't know what it is. I just always have.
Yeah.
But to ask that question, I have never figured out, I've never been able to put my finger on why. I don't know if it's one of those things because I'm a very positive, happy person. Most people look at me and are like, wait, you do what? Yeah, I'm in a metal band. I play metal music. Like, wait, what? Okay. I just like dark imagery. I think like really cool looking creatures are neat. Like the Predator is probably one of the best like concepts for a character, in my opinion, that they've made. Like I just love that. And it's funny because if you ask like, well, why do you like dark things or evil things? It's like, I don't know. Maybe I've integrated with my dark side or my shadow side. Maybe it's a healthy thing. All I know is I feel like most people that I've talked to that have been into like dark stuff tend to be some of the nicest people I've ever met. So I've always been curious
Yes.
about the psychology behind it because who knows, maybe it's making up for something, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just we're integrated with the darkness and in a
But
good way.
maybe that goes back to our balance, to
Uh-huh.
where we're more balanced in the
Maybe.
sense of we understand the darkness more. We can resonate with it more because I grew up always liking the hero, always liking the good guy, which still to this day, like Henry Cavill Superman is like, that's my guy. That's my guy. And, but I love villains as I understand them now. And like a lot of villains, they're just looked at as the villain and that's it. And it's like a lot of them are morally gray in the sense of like what those bad things that they're doing them because they feel that's the right thing to do. They in their heart are feeling like they're like the Joker in The Dark Knight that was played by Heath Ledger. He
Uh-huh.
was trying to take down the corrupt government. And if you think about it, like he never really killed anybody. Like he gave, like even when he blew up the hospital, he gave plenty of warning to make sure it was completely evacuated. And it's like he was trying to take down that corruption, even though he was very chaotic in it. But in his eyes, he was doing good, even though he was labeled as the villain. And so I feel like a lot of villains are very misunderstood. Like Darth Vader, if you actually, like, he's one of my all time favorite villains because of the, from when he was a young boy as Anakin up until when he died. And he still he was just such an emotional character. And and where I'm a very emotional guy, and I imagine you being in touch with your feminine side as well, like you can be emotional at times too. Um, but I like emotion. I like emotion is a very powerful thing. And
Uh-huh.
even trying to practice the stoic lifestyle, you know, even though you don't show much emotion, they want you to feel all of that emotion. You're
Uh-huh.
supposed to feel everything. You just don't let that emotion control you. Is essentially what it
Uh-huh.
is. So you just got to keep it all under control. Because
Yeah.
just because you're in a bad mood doesn't give you the right to be rude to other people around you.
Exactly. You know what's funny is I've always naturally gravitated to the villain, and I don't know why. Ever since I was a kid, like for instance, like I'm rooting for Darth Maul on episode one, the whole entire movie.
Oh gosh.
I'm like, dude, Darth Maul is the coolest looking character, and I was like, he's the best with
Oh
the light
yeah.
lightsaber. He just needs to, like
Oh
when he killed Qui-Gon Jinn, I was like, yes, okay, now you got one more. And then I was devastated when he got cut in half because I'm like, that was stupid. You could have killed Obi-Wan too. What were you doing? So
uh,
that was my concept as a kid, even just thinking like that's who I was rooting for in the theater, and I'm like, I don't know. That's just been me. I don't know. It makes no sense. But the villain,
yeah.
there's something about a villain that I gravitate to. And I don't know if it's just character concept, like the way they look, or if it's the motivations, or maybe both. I don't know.
I think a lot of it is just that they're very misunderstood. Like, so the Superman movies with Christopher Reeve, when General Zod came and he's basically just trying to take over the Earth and stuff, you have no idea why he's doing what he's doing. Mm-hmm. Like, he's just bad, evil guy, like just destroying all this stuff. But then in Henry Cavill's Man of Steel, you learn why General Zod does everything he's doing, and he's trying to save his people. And it's like, and he is doing an honorable thing just in a very chaotic way. Yep. So it's like saving your child at the cost of somebody else's child. It's kind of how I see, like, in his perspective. And that's one thing, like, where you resonate with villains. I understand my reasoning resonating with them, because I didn't resonate with them until I was older. And now I try to understand them, like, why are they doing what they're doing? So, because it's very fascinating to me.
Yeah, it really is. And a good villain always makes the hero story that much better, right? Because it pushes the hero to limits that they can't do it, or that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
Oh, yeah. So, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So now, what question are you leaving the next guest?
So, I thought on this one a little bit. It's like back and forth. And I kind of landed on one of your earlier questions about, like, what was life growing up? What was it life like growing up as a child? Well, all of us have an inner child. And like, you're probably the person now that the 5-year-old version of you would feel safe with. And so I kind of played on that in the sense of, would the kid version of you be proud of who you are today? Not just safe with you, but would they be proud of you for the person you've become? And it doesn't necessarily have to be like the little kid version of you. It could be, like the teenager version of you. But just, would the young version of you be proud of who you are today?
So would the kid version of you be proud of the person you have become?
Yeah.
But the younger version. Okay. We'll emphasize kid, though, if they want to.
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Anything else, Chip?
Well, I think we covered most everything. So with I didn't get super nitty gritty into certain details, just that I didn't feel was necessary, but
of course.
But there was a couple things that got glossed over, but it's got quite a bit of content for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Sweet. Well, hey, Chip, I'm so glad that you were up for being on the podcast, and it was nice having you a guest. It's cool. I always think this is a fun way to connect with people, because it's not every day you ask these questions to people,
Oh, no, and then just give them room to just like blurt it all out.
Exactly.
So, yeah, no, I think, and it was something that a movie I really enjoyed was, I haven't seen it in years, called Yes Man. With Jim Carrey, where he just says yes to everything, and it leads to all of these amazing experiences. And I try to do that a lot nowadays, to where even if something makes me nervous, I'm like, screw it, I'm doing it, I'm all in. And I almost did that with the Highland Games. When I found out what it all entailed I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. And I was like, just do it. Let's do it and find out. And then I fell in love with it. And the same thing with this. Is like, my first reaction is like, oh, like maybe not, and it's like, no, just do it. Just do it. Something might come of it. And so I like to say yes. I like to do things that make me uncomfortable. So Steve Harvey said, if you want to be successful, you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Very true.
So yeah, no, I appreciate you asking. That was like, yeah, I was kind of jazzed about it.
Yeah, no, it seemed like it made sense, because we just reconnected with it. And we were talking about the Highland Games. It's like, well, dude, why don't we just talk about it? I'm sure you got some fun stuff to share. And yeah, you were thrilled about it. So I was like, even better, right? I didn't have to try to convince you. There's a few people I've had to try to convince, like, trust me, you got a good story to tell. And
like that guy that you worked with, you said it took you like 5 months or something to convince him.
Yeah, it took a while. Yeah. But he did it, and it was great. It was a great episode. So, and it's funny, it's always like that too. It's like people just get nervous about talking about things, or maybe they don't feel like they have an interesting story, and that's usually what holds people up. And it's like everybody has a cool story to tell. It doesn't matter who you are. There's always something that you can share that's just going to be different, right? And that's going to be interesting. So
yeah. So, well, good deal, man. I thoroughly enjoyed this so very much.
Cool.
So,
Yep. Me too. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to maybe, since I've had you on the podcast, maybe we can also put some of the cool Highland stuff that we do together on the podcast too.
Oh yeah,
if you're game for that, because I like doing that sometimes.
Absolutely.
If you know, if I've had a guest on there and we're doing stuff that they're talking about, like I've posted, like I had a skateboarder on here once, and like, hey, just give me your video and I'll post it on the podcast because you were a guest on it. So yeah, maybe we can do some stuff there. So I doubt if this will be the last time we connect podcast wise.
Oh yeah, I'm fine with that. So, and then I'll be seeing you in person on Saturday too.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I'm excited.
Yeah, well, good deal. So I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you, Chip, so much. And I'll catch you later, okay?
All right, sounds good.